Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about my take on the Buff Green Aggro deck of the Vibes TCG. This deck is great for climbing the ladder because it has quick games and it's easy to play. It's not quite of the caliber of a deck I would take to a tournament, but for becoming a dummy thick, it's more than enough. It's also great for beginners because the games are straightforward and it's very easy to do very well with it. In this video, we're going to first talk about the cards that make up the deck and how they kind of fit together and what role they each play. Then we're going to go through the mulligans, budget substitutions, and also this general strategy of the deck. After that, we'll jump into some games and have some live gameplay. All right, so let's jump in. So overall, the core of this deck is built around having a strong early curve and winning early vibe checks. So to do that, there are kind of two different types of cards that help in the early game. The first is what I'm going to call buff cards. These are cards that want to be buffed up by other cards. And so the first one of these is going to be Penguin Whose Garden Grows. And what Penguin Whose Garden Grows says is at the start of action time, if another penguin in your huddle is tied with the largest penguin in play, boost this penguin's vibe by 6. And so this means that if you have a 4 vibe penguin and they have a 4 vibe penguin, this penguin actually becomes an 8 vibe penguin. And so it's really easy to win early vibe checks with this penguin because you actually only need to tie the vibe check with a different penguin. The other penguin that's super strong for this is PeppyPenguin, because PeppyPenguin says at the start of your action time, if this penguin's vibe is 6 or greater, boost its vibe by 6 for the rest of the cycle. So as long as you can boost its vibe to 6, it all of a sudden gets a vibe of 12. And in the early mid game, a vibe of 12 will almost always win the vibe check. The last penguin is in the 4 slot, which is PopcornPenguin. A boosted PopcornPenguin is one of the strongest tools in the game right now. Because PopcornPenguin says at the start of action time, ice a penguin in play that's vibing the least. If there's a tie, you pick. And so if you can boost this up to a vibe of 4 or 6, it enables you to remove all of your opponent's penguins that have a vibe up to 4 or 6, which basically will just mean you'll win the game. A snowballing popcorn penguin is really hard to combat. The other thing that's really strong about popcorn penguin is its ability is actually a trigger and it doesn't go on the stack. So that means a lot of the tools that decks have to deal with the popcorn penguin, such as a daydreaming penguin, actually can't deal with it because its ability happens first. All right, so that's the cards we want to buff, but how do we buff them? So in order to buff them, there's 3 cards that really focus on that. The first is Sliding Penguin. So Sliding Penguin says, at the start of your action time, choose a penguin and boost its vibe by 2 for the rest of the cycle. So with that, you can easily boost some other penguin's vibe by 2 or itself. And so this is a very versatile tool because you can move the buff around. Also in the 2-drop slot, we have SupportiveFriend, which says when this penguin enters a huddle, you may choose a penguin and put 2 vibe counters on it. And so that can also be super strong because, yeah, that just enables you to buff something permanently. And then it can also buff itself. So if you don't have a 2-drop, you can just play this out as a 2/4, which can be very strong in the early game. And then the other card that's really good for buffing is Inspiring Story, because that basically gives a buff of 2 for your entire board at the start of the action phase. And so you have basically these 12 buff cards. And so, yeah, so throughout the game, you'll be trying to basically play out the cards that need to get buffed and then buffing them with the buff cards. And these cards are just very strong pound for pound in the early and mid game, which enables you to quickly win early vibe checks to get lots of rods to then play out your late game. All right, so then let's talk about removal a bit. So this deck runs 2 pieces of removal. So first of all, there's GotEm. GotEm is just such a strong card. I put this basically in every deck, and there's just so many powerful 2 vibe penguins out there, including Popcorn Penguin, which just need to be removed right away. So GotEm is a really, really good card. Then, other than GotEm, we also have WalktheRunway. So WalktheRunway basically lets you choose a penguin in each huddle and ice the one that's vibing the least. Because your penguins are generally going to be very big, this often is able to find its targets. Okay, so that's a removal package. So there's a few other, I'll call them like utility cards in the deck. The first one is Sneaky Penguin. Sneaky Penguin, this deck has no card draw, and that's just a function of that green doesn't really run any good card draw. So Sneaky Penguin is really good in this deck because it lets you look at 2 cards each turn and decide which one you want. So if this deck had a lot of card draw, I wouldn't probably run Sneaky Penguin, but because it doesn't, Sneaky Penguin is great, and there's the 3 slot is actually a good natural fit because this deck only has one other 3 slot card. And also the thought is, okay, well, this isn't green, so is it a problem that we're not producing Pudge? And I think the same could be said for Supportive Friend. And this card is really, really light on spells that require Pudge, so it's a very Pudge light deck. And so it's not really that big of a disadvantage to be running off color cards in here. Same with Popcorn. Popcorn also is off color. And then the other utility card is GreenMegaPenguin. So GreenMegaPenguin serves 2 purposes in this deck. The first purpose is that GreenMegaPenguin is is able to, for in certain matchups, like especially against red, they can't deal with a green mega penguin, and you basically just win the game. So there are certain matchups where you just win the game with a green mega penguin, but then also you'll often have situations where you actually have penguins on your side of the board that need to be removed. So the 2 examples I can think about are, first of all, let's say you have a popcorn penguin and you've already gotten 3 or 4 icings with it, but now there's nothing left on your opponent's board. It will end up icing itself. So instead, you play the green mega penguin on that turn, ice the popcorn penguin, and then you basically get value out of its body as well. The other card can be supportive friend. So let's talk about the situation where you have a supportive friend, or you play a popcorn penguin, and then you play a supportive friend to boost the popcorn penguin to have a vibe of 4. Well, then the popcorn penguin will look for the lowest vibe penguin, which is actually now the supportive friend. So, for supportive friend to effectively buff popcorn penguin, you need to do something with the body of supportive friend, and green mega penguin can be great for doing that play as well. All right, and then there's also one other card, which is I'm going to put as a utility card, which is Blossoming Penguin. We just need to win early vibe checks, and there's just not enough 2 drops in this deck because so far we really want to have run 12 2 drops so that we can win the vibe checks early. And so Blossoming Penguin slots in as that final 2 drop. Then let's talk about the finishers. So sometimes to close out the game, there's going to be three cards that help with that. The first is Romulus. Romulus is just, you very quickly can get to 7 fish with this deck, and then you just play Romulus, and a lot of decks just can't deal with it because it has vibe of 12. There's probably an inspiring story and a sliding penguin on the board at that point. So it's going to be like 14, 16, 18, and it's probably only going to be like cycle 6 or 7, and a lot of decks won't be able to deal with that, and you'll just win the game. Then there is CleanUpGood. So if you're playing like a mid-rangey deck that actually has a bigger penguin than that, CleanUpGood basically lets you double the vibe of any penguin. And so usually between Romulus and Peppy, you'll have a 12, 14, 16 penguin. And then you can just play CleanUpGood. And if you play CleanUpGood then, you're going to end up, with a 24, 28 penguin. And that will generally win you the game. Make sure you only play this on the final turn. The last the last penguin to the last kind of card that's also put as a finisher is HungryPenguin. So one thing that this deck struggles with is dealing with a very large penguin. So you could imagine like a bunkus or maybe an extrovert penguin that has grown to just a ridiculous size. Like sometimes you'll see penguins that are 30, 40 vibe. But Hungry Penguin offers not quite removal, but you can just flop those penguins. So on the final turn, you use Hungry Penguin, you flop the penguin, you win the vibe check, and you end the game. So yeah, so that's going through all the cards. So let's talk real quick about budget substitutions. So, right, in the rare card slots, we've got Popcorn, we've got Romulus, and let's see what else we got, GotEm. So if you don't have those cards, I think there's a few cards that we can put in. So the first one is Koi Penguin. Oh, and Green Mega Penguin, yeah. So Koi Penguin, this comes in the green starter deck. I believe there's one copy. So if you don't have Green Mega Penguin, you can use a Koi Penguin. Koi Penguin is also really good with buff cards because it kind of acts as a finisher. So if they have a 12 vibe penguin, you play Koi Penguin, or let's say they have a Bunkus and they have a 40 vibe Bunkus, you play Koi Penguin, it gets 40 vibe, and then you just buff it with Inspiring Story or Sliding Penguin, and then you end up winning the final vibe check. So Koi Penguin can be a really strong finisher. Then let's see what else there is. Yeah, so points rich penguin. So if you don't have Romulus, just put in points rich. It's kind of like a budget version of Romulus. It costs 1 less fish, which can be nice, has 2 less vibe, but almost always 10 vibe will be enough. Part of the reason we play Romulus, not points rich, is we already have Hungry Penguin in the 6th slot. But like if Hungry Penguin costs 7, we'd probably play points rich. So it's still like it's pretty much serves the same function. Then there is also Curious Penguin. So Curious Penguin can fit in if you don't have some of the cards. It's just a standard 3-drop. It can help you win early vibe checks. So it's pretty good too. And then there's also Escape in Time. So if you have Escape in Time is a really good tech card, and we'll get to tech cards in a second. So Escape in Time can work against control decks to protect your board. So if you don't have some of the cards, you can also put in Escape in Time. All right, so let's talk about the tech slots. So the cards that I think are kind of flexible in this deck are CleanUpGood and GreenMegaPenguin. So I think you basically everything else in this deck I would consider core. And so you have these 2 slots, or it's actually 1 slot that I like running the list with 2 CleanUpGood and 2 GreenMegaPenguin. But if you're gonna if you don't like that's really, really good for playing against like mid-rangey decks, which I think a lot of the latter is right now. But if you're playing a lot of aggressive decks, I would put in maybe Curious Penguin instead. And if you're playing a lot of control decks, I think Escape in Time would be pretty good. And so I think it's kind of like you just have to kind of feel out which ones work for you and your play style. And so I think really the ones I'm thinking about is Curious Penguin, um, and Escape in Time, but really mainly Escape in Time. I think Curious Penguin is more of a budget substitution than a good tech card. All right. So that's the card list. So let's talk briefly about the strategy of this deck. So you need to have a strong start. So when you mulligan, you just really want to be mulliganing for 2 drops. That's the most important thing. So in the mulligan, go for 2 drops. And if you have a 2 drop, then you can start keeping a curve. And so you want to kind of go 2 into 3 into 4, or 2 into 3 into 2 twos. Or, right, if you have Blossoming Penguin, you might end up going directly from 2 to 4 because you'll win that second vibe check, or same with Supportive Friend. So kind of look at your hand and kind of plan out how the first few turns are going to go. You really don't need to be keeping anything big. The only thing that I would keep maybe is a popcorn penguin or a sliding penguin. Like the 4 drops, if the rest of the hand is good, you can keep up into a 4 drop. And I guess if you have the perfect hand, you can keep it all. Like if you had a 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 into 6, fine, keep that. Also GotEm. You definitely want a GotEm in the early game. So GotEm is a card that I would recommend keeping as well. If you have a 2-drop. Well, I would probably keep this on its own too, just because it's such a good early game rod. However, so let's talk a little bit about the strategy. This is an aggressive deck, so you really just want to get to 14 rods as quickly as possible and then just win the game there. This deck does not have good long-term prospects because it doesn't have any card draw. So you're going to lose the longer, like if the game goes too long, you'll end up losing. So you really just want to play very aggressively onto the board, win vibe checks, ramp out rods quickly, drop a Romulus, drop a Hungry Penguin, end the game. I think it does. And so, like, one of the things that aggressive decks struggle with is board clears. So, the way that you deal with a board clear in this deck is first of all, Inspiring Story is very good against board clears because it stays on the board. And so, if you suspect your opponent is about to clear the board because, maybe they're yellow playing Yum Yum and you saw them draw it, or, they're just playing in a way that they would have it, a really good way to deal with that is just to hold back like a Romulus. So then, and then just to try to get as many rods in play as possible. Because imagine that they clear the board And then the turn after that, you just drop a Romulus. You already have an inspiring story on the board, and you have 10 rods. All of a sudden, you have 12 points in play and a 14 vibe penguin, and they might struggle to deal with that. So that's kind of the general approach to the game. And then make sure you're planning around that final turn. I like holding back Hungry Penguin as long as possible and just using it on the final turn, because if you play it early, your opponent knows it's on the board, and then they can play around it. So this is one of those cards that, on the final turn, it's very common for me for my final turn to be like Hungry Penguin and then maybe a cleanup good depending on the board state. Next, let's talk a little bit about the matchup against the green Caffeine Mega Penguin deck. This deck has been running wild on the ladder right now, and there's been a lot of questions of how to do well against that deck. And the Buff Green Aggro deck actually has a really good matchup against it. So, in general, I think even running the list as is would have a pretty strong matchup. And the reason for that is just cleanup good is so strong against caffeine, because whenever they flop your penguins, all you need to do is make sure you have 3 Pudge available, and then you can just play cleanup good on something like a Romulus. You're going to have a 24 vibe penguin on that final turn, and they won't be able to handle it. However, if you're someone that really wants to do well in this particular matchup, I think there's some changes we can make to the deck to make it really strong. The first thing we want to do is we would definitely want to put in all 4 cleanup goods. And we can then, to do that, we'll just remove the green mega penguins, which were the other kind of tech slot in this deck. So even this is going to really help. It's a little counterintuitive, but you're not going to be able to beat a green mega penguin deck at the green mega penguin game. The reason for that is they're usually running hot rod and more buff cards than you, and they're also running introvert, so they might get a slightly faster start. So in general, we'll try to beat them with cleanup good. And then the other card that really helps is What a Twist. Um, because what a twist will let you do is, um, that will let you unflop your unflop your penguins, and on that final turn as well. Or it might enable you to unflop a penguin in order to have 3 Pudge available to play cleanup good. So we'll put that in, and what will we do to make space for What a Twist is, I think we can take out the GotEms. So the problem with the GotEm is, while it's good in other matchups, GotEm is really struggles because they end up just buffing their stuff out of the range of GotEm anyway. And then the last thing is Supportive Friend. The issue with Supportive Friend is it doesn't produce green Pudge. And to play cleanup good, we'll need green Pudge. So we'll get rid of Supportive Friend, and we will add in Stargazing Penguin. So Stargazing Penguin is pretty much like Supportive Friend, but it produces green Pudge. And because you're often struggling to get to 3 Pudge just to play cleanup good, this swap helps a lot. And then the last thing is Hungry Penguin is very useless in that matchup. And what Green Mega Penguin Caffeine deck really struggles with is if you just have a lot of big threats. So we'll get rid of Hungry Penguin, and then we'll add Points Rich Penguin, which is just a big, beefy penguin, a big, chunky penguin, I guess you could say. And again, this is something that the Caffeine decks really struggle with, because you just have 4 or 5 big penguins out. They can only flop a certain amount of them. You use Sliding Penguin, you use Inspiring Story, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're winning the vibe check. All right, so if you're really looking for, like, I want an anti-caffeine deck list, this is what I would suggest running. Now, would I actually run this list? I don't think so, just because I think it's going to be too weak in other matchups. I think if we wanted to split the difference, we would put probably some GotEms back. Um, and we probably wouldn't do the stargazing thing just because, maybe. No, just because I think Supportive Friend is so much better. So maybe you'd have something like this. Oh, and I think the Point Search Penguin also, I would put the Hungry Penguin back. But anyway, so that's kind of how you could deal with the caffeine matchup. Again, I think you need to find a balance between kind of what is the like deck list optimized for the entire field versus caffeine, and that really depends on what you're facing and how what you're really which matchups you're really struggling with. So I think you can kind of go between those 2 lists. The one thing that you definitely do not want to take out of this deck is the popcorn package, just because it's so strong, and without it, you're really gonna have, like, no chance against yellow, which is still a large portion of the ladder. But yeah, so that's the overall strategy. So now let's jump into some games and see the deck in action. Okay, so looking at our hand, we don't have any 2 drops, so we're definitely gonna mulligan aggressively. And the question is, do we keep PeppyPenguin? Because yeah, but I don't think keeping Peppy by itself is good. I think if we had a 2 drop, we would definitely keep it, but we really wanna get an early start, so we're gonna go full mulligan in order to look for the 2 drop. Alright, we didn't get a 2 drop, but we did get another Peppy. We have 2 popcorns, which depending on what color we're playing, could be useful. We have CleanUpGood, which I think is gonna become a rod. Oh, we got a 2 drop, perfect. Okay, so now our hand is looking a lot better than it was 10 seconds ago. So, yeah, so I think CleanUpGood is really only good for the final turn of the game, so we're gonna play that as a rod. It's a little not great to do that because now we know we only have 1 CleanUpGood left in the deck, but we can't just afford to hold that in our hand the whole game, especially with a hand like this. Now, I think there's another question of should we keep 2 popcorns, and I think I wanna see what type of deck they're playing because okay, so it's yellow. So 2 popcorns, can be very good against yellow, just because if they have a way to deal with the first one. Alright, so we got a GotEm, so that'll be a good rod to play, and then we're gonna play Penguin Whose Garden Grows, which is great because we're gonna win the vibe check. And now the question is, do we actually play the first popcorn now? Because we're gonna win the vibe check, and I think one of the downsides of doing that is then we're gonna just basically it's gonna discourage them from playing another penguin. But, so this is gonna be a very interesting decision. So let's talk through the merits of doing both paths. So if we play a popcorn penguin, they will know not to play into it, and we might prevent them from playing a second penguin, which could really help us get an early, like, tempo lead on the game. Because if we play popcorn, we'll remove the yellow wizard penguin, then they might be prevented from playing something else, which means we're just gonna really get a fast start, and then we have a second popcorn for later. But I think I'd rather get more value. Like, if I can wait for them to have two vibes, and yellow often does that, I think playing the second popcorn or playing the popcorn, like waiting one more turn, and let's see if we can get a 2-for-1 with a popcorn. So I think it's better to wait. And the question is, do we want to play a rod? And I think, hmm, yeah. So extrovert penguin is what we'd really want to save removal for. But I think, right, I think we're going to play this aggressively, and we'll play the walk the runway as a rod, just because that gives us so much more openings for if we get a inspiring story or a hungry penguin. Like, there's a lot of 5 cost penguins that would enable us to play by playing the rod this turn. All right, so yeah, so now we're definitely playing a popcorn penguin next turn. So I think this is going to be one of those games where up. Okay, okay. So now they are playing. They pulled. So they could have played the penguin who zooms to counteract us anyway. So because I know they have a penguin who might bring a +1 in their hand, I think I'm going to play this even slower. Like, we can afford to wait one more turn, and we'll play the popcorn, like, we'll wait till there's 2 targets for the popcorn. So let's see, so they have a wizard penguin and a penguin who's late to the party. So there's gonna be a lot of targets for popcorn penguin. So yeah, I think we wanna get a little more greedy. So we win another vibe check, which is good, but I do think at this point, we're pretty good on rods. Like, we've ramped out to 6 rods or to 5 rods already with the o option to play 6. And so yeah, I think okay, so we got the green mega penguin. Okay, so now actually, because we drew the green mega penguin, I am gonna play the popcorn because we're gonna be able to do that play I talked about earlier, where we're gonna play the popcorn penguin. It's gonna take out the green wizard penguin, and then the green mega penguin will take out the front half of the popcorn penguin. Okay, so they played another 2 vibe penguin. So in that case, that might not actually be necessary. So, now the question is, do we actually wanna play 2 popcorn penguins? Okay, so this is another really important thing with this deck is ordering the triggers. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter, but there are going to be situations where ordering the start of turn triggers matter. So hopefully we'll get some good situations about that. Okay, so we'll take out the Wizard Penguin just because that produces 2 Pudge. And if we didn't take out the Wizard Penguin, they'd be able to play Not Your Keys and remove our Popcorn Penguin. So at this point, the question is, do we go full popcorn? Like, do we play a second popcorn? But I don't think that that's right because we're gonna just slowly grind out. We're gonna grind it out with one popcorn, and if they do find removal for the popcorn, I want to have a second popcorn ready to just play right after that. Because with yellow, there's so many good popcorn targets, especially if we draw something like an inspiring story, which will buff up. Hmm. They're making it very tempting to play the second popcorn because now we have 3 targets, so it's gonna take quite some time. But okay, so I kind of want to start thinking about keeping cleanup good. So I think I'm just going to play the other Peppy and the Penguin Whose Garden Grows. And at this point, we want to keep, okay, so none of these trigger orders matter. We want to keep cleanup good for that final turn. Um, but yeah, so one of the things that's happened in this game so far is, and we'll take out the Wizard Penguin again, is we haven't had any buff cards. So that's something that is holding us back a little bit right now, but I think we'll find some soon because now our deck is very full of buff cards. Okay, so they played Not Your Keys on Popcorn. So that's a little sad for our popcorn, but we have a second popcorn, which I don't know if they were ready for that. So yeah, so Popcorn Penguin again, it's so strong against yellow. And that's one of the things that makes this deck really good right now in the current ladder is there's so much yellow. And popcorn is really good against yellow, especially when it's buffed up. So what we really need now is like an inspiring story. I think an inspiring story and a supportive friend together would be great. Or even just, well, okay, so we got the supportive friend. So we're gonna play this. So oh yeah, supportive friend is good. Okay, so we'll play the supportive friend on the Peppy Penguin, and then we'll play our second popcorn. And so the Peppy Penguin, we need one more buff, and then it'll be able to go up to being a 12. And then we'll play cleanup good to get it to be a 24, and then we'll end the game. All right, so there's no good targets here. Oh, yeah, so the nice thing is Penguin Whose Garden Grows. Okay, so because Peppy Penguin is now a 4 vibe, the Mysterious Penguin is 4. So even though we're tied, we're going to win the vibe check. However, we have now, like, right, in the earlier I was saying you really want to win the early vibe checks. But at this point, we're kind of past that because we really want more cards. So I don't think it's the end of the world to lose a vibe check now, but well, we're gonna win it anyway. Okay, so we're approaching the final turn, and I think this might be a good time. Yeah, so this is one of the things with GreenMegaPenguin to keep in mind is that because you have to sacrifice a card when you play it, it's not gonna increase your point counter because you're basically going for a 1-for-1 trade. All right, so let's 5. So I think we just play everything, and we'll eat the supportive friend, and hopefully we'll, yeah, so we're just gonna basically say that they don't have it and that we'll win the game from here. Because I think the reason we were saving Green Mega Penguin to deal with Popcorn Penguin, but I think the way this is going, that's not gonna matter. So we wanna put the Green Mega Penguin first before the Penguin Whose Garden Grows, just because not that it matters in this board state, but it's just better to, as good practice, you want your Green Mega Penguin boosting before your garden grows, just in case that makes it that specific boost makes the tying the vibe check condition happen. So yeah. So overall, this looks like we're gonna win here. I think it's a little bit, yeah, this was kind of just one of those games where Popcorn Penguin runs away with it. But I think this is also one of the things with this deck is it's really meant to get the most out of Popcorn Penguin. And because Popcorn Penguin is so strong right now, getting the most out of Popcorn Penguin is definitely worth it. All right. So it looks like we're going to win the vibe check, which is great. And that should, yeah, I think then that should be the game. All right. Cool. So good finish to the first game, and let's jump into another one, and hopefully we'll do just as good, and we'll learn more aspects of the deck. All right, jumping into the next game. So we've got a 2 We've got Inspiring Story, which is great. So I think we'll get rid of CleanUpGood and Hungry Penguin because we don't. Hungry Penguin is really only good at the end of the game. We'll keep both 2 drops just because we don't have a 3. So worst case, we can go 2 into 2. All right, so we have a 3 now, which is good. All right, I don't think we need this many Blossoming Penguins, so we'll use 1 as a rod. So we already have 1 boost for Peppy Penguin. So we'll be able to. So we just need to find 1 more boosting card, and then Peppy Penguin will be yeah, we'll be a 12 vibe, which will be good for snowballing the game. So okay, so we have a good start, and yeah, so I think okay, so we're gonna go Blossoming Penguin into Peppy Penguin. Oh, into Sliding Penguin, perfect. So we don't even need the next Blossoming Penguin. So I think this is going to be a great game to showcase how the buffing aspect of this deck works. So, the previous game showed a lot about the Popcorn Penguin side of the deck, and now we're going to see the buffing side, hopefully. And we also have Walk the Runway, which will be good for removal. Oh, okay. So this is some sort of deck with Extrovert. I don't usually see that card, or Introvert Penguin. So I'm curious what type of deck this is because that's not a commonly played card. Um, but yeah, so we'll see how the buffing side goes. So again, right, we're gonna play Peppy Penguin, then we're gonna play Sliding Penguin to buff it, and then we'll play Inspiring Story to buff it again. Now, I do want to maybe hold on to Walk the Runway just because of I'm not sure what type of deck this is, so I don't know how critical the removal spell is going to be. Um, but we'll see. All right, so Hungry Penguin, Hungry Penguin. Okay, so since we have Hungry Penguin, I think we can get rid of no, because I guess we can get rid of Sliding Penguin because we have a good curve of 3 into 4 into 5 into 6. So we don't need the other Sliding Penguin. So we'll kind of play out our curve as we draw the cards, and we'll have Walk the Runway as emergency removal in case there's something that needs to get removed. Yeah. So and again, what we were really looking for now is Hmm. I don't even know what our hand has basically the kind of way that this deck is going to play out. So overall, I feel good about kind of the progression of how the game is going to go. All right, Romulus even better. Okay, so perfect. So we have everything we need, and hopefully, so right there's 5 points already, and then so that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Plus, we'll get a rod each turn 10, 11, 12, 13. And then yeah. So we're basically on the turn we play Romulus, we'll be looking to close out the game. And maybe we'll play the Walk the Runway as a rod that turn. And then it would be over then. So we're kind of looking to end by cycle 8, which again, as an aggressive deck. Okay, second Romulus is, yeah, I don't think we need the second Romulus because one Romulus is big enough. Unless they're running removal. So yeah, so okay, so we'll boost do we want to win? Okay, so the question is, do we want to tie the vibe check or not? And because I want this game to end as quickly as possible, I actually I don't want to tie the vibe check. I'm looking to lose the vibe check here just to get another card in hand because right, I'm just trying to make the game end as quickly as possible because we're an aggressive deck. And when you tie the vibe check, I'm just giving them more chance to play out the cards in their hand. And I feel like I already have a good plan for how to play the cards in my hand. So Peppy Penguin, that will become a rod. We don't need to have 2 Peppy Penguins because right, the Sliding Penguin can only buff 1 anyway. So okay, so this is okay, so then extrovert. So this is some sort of yellow deck, probably yellow deck just with introvert teched in. Um okay, so they have so yeah, I don't think it changes our game plan because okay, so the question is, do we want to remove the extrovert penguin? Because extrovert penguin can kind of spiral out of control. And so I think maybe if we have an opportunity to remove it while it's still small, maybe we'll do that. Let's see what else they play. Okay, so yeah, so they're playing so we'll be able to remove the extrovert if we want. So I think removing the extrovert is going to actually be a good idea. Just because extrovert is one of those cards that can scale out of control. Okay, so here's a good situation where we have to order the triggers. We want the Peppy Penguin to be boosted before because we want it to get its boost. So we'll put it at the end of the trigger chain so that we can basically take the Sliding Penguin, boost the Peppy Penguin to 4, Inspiring Story, boost it to 6, then it boosts itself to 12. So, all right, so we have a nice big Peppy Penguin, and I think we're gonna play Walk the Runaway to get rid of the extrovert, just because, um, yeah, just because like extrovert can grow out of control. So I think it'll be good to just remove it while it's still small. Because, right, with Walk the Runway, it says you have to ice the penguin that's vibing the least. So if the extrovert happens to grow bigger than 12, which, with yellow, can always happen because they can just go like penguin who zooms, inquisitive, penguin who zooms, and all of a sudden it's at 12. So I think it's good to take care of the extrovert early. This deck, right, it runs 8 pieces of removal, but 2 of them are limited to just 2 vibe penguins. So I think it's fine. I think the yellow, because if they have a shy penguin is just gonna be at 10, but our peppy penguin is already bigger. Alright, so what do we wanna do here? So we wanna get everything out of our hands, so we definitely wanna play a rod. I think, we'll wanna save Hungry Penguin for sure. I think Sliding Penguin is just worse than Inspiring Story. So let's play Sliding Penguin as the rod, and then let's just play Romulus out there just to be fish efficient. And then next turn, we'll be looking to end the game. So we're at 12 now, which means that next turn, we'll be able to play 1 rod. And yeah, so that should work. That should work pretty well. Okay, so yeah, because we'll get 1 rod from winning the vibe check. We'll play one card from hand, and then we'll play another rod. Okay, again, we'll put Peppy Penguin at the end of the thing, and we'll boost Peppy Penguin as well, so that we'll have we'll have a 12 and a 14. So, and this game is really showcasing like how fast we're now on pretty early in the game, and we have a 14 vibe and a 12 vibe. And we're gonna have, even on the final turn, we're gonna have a 14, a 16, and a 14. And a lot of decks struggle to deal with that. And so this deck is, again, it's just really about just getting out there quickly. Okay, a GotEm is a perfect rod because if we need to remove this pot stirring penguin, we can. All right, so what are we going to do? I think we'll play the Hungry Penguin just because that's the most flexible. And we're going to play 1 more as a rod. So we'll play this other Inspiring Story as a rod. And the reason we're doing that is in case they have a piece of removal, like a Not Your Keys, we'll still be at 14, which will then allow us to still win the game. So, yeah. So I think this game is a good state, and we'll have it locked up here. So, yeah. But anyway, so this is kind of how this deck plays out. I mean, let's not count our chickens before the game is before the game is over, but I don't really think there is any cards that yellow can play to get out of this situation. Because yeah, the extrovert. Because even if this extrovert gets really big, we have the Hungry Penguin to flop it. And so this is why Hungry Penguin is so good in this deck, because yeah, so look, the extrovert, let's even say this extrovert was 18 at this point. Even the Hungry Penguin would take care of it. All right, so let's just make sure that we boost our Peppy again. And again, the reason we want to boost our Peppy here instead of just making Romulus really big is if they have Not Your Keys, I want to have 2 penguins that are above the 10. However, we could flop it anyway with Hungry Penguin. So yeah, okay, so that's the end of the game. And that's also going to be the end of the video. So thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, yeah, please let me know. And I'm going to just keep making more deck guides because I just want to make sure that everyone has access to good decks. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Thanks everyone.